Now, before you watch this video, let me put a foundation for you on how events are going to unfold in the following conversation. Now, Shahid BOLSEN, together with Sheikh Turabi, they are having a very, very wonderful conversation. And this conversation is about one most important thing. Now, somebody said, it is better the devil you know, than the angel you've never seen. Because the devil you know, you're going to distance yourself from them. Okay? Because you know this person is a devil and you understand. But the angel you've never seen, you don't know if they're angels or they're not really angels. So you might walk alongside them thinking they are angels, and they are not angels. Instead, they are devils in angels form, and they can easily cut your head down. Okay? Now, Shahid BOLSEN is explaining how we have messed up, we have missed the point, we've gone to places that we thought they are homes, and yet they are not homes. Because the people living around there, they made these places look like home. They painted the place look sweet, look nice, look better. And so we wanted, or we chose to go there because how the nest was painted, it looked very good. Like, for example, a spider goes ahead and builds a web. When you look at a spider's web, it looks very, very, very good. Okay? But if you enter to this web, you coming out of the spider's web becomes very difficult. And so these empires were built and they have been painted to look better. How they are showing it out, how they're portraying it and displaying it looks better. And therefore, it convinces us to go stay there or visit there thinking these are homes. And at the end of the day, they are not really homes. They are traps. And we end up trapping ourselves, and we end up suffering, crying, and complaining. We end up finding life so difficult because of the lies. They were lied to. It's home. It has been made to look like home. Now, again, Shahid BOLSEN is telling us how we can be able to get out of this. How the Quran is helping us, to set ourselves free. How the Bible is helping us to set ourselves free. Bible and Quran are just the same thing. And that is why you find out that Louis Farrakhan always uses the both of them, because they are just talking about the many events are just the same. And therefore, he's telling us how we can use the spiritual matter, like spiritual life, to take ourselves or extract ourselves out of this trap, okay? Or out of this, this bondage, this captivity, because we have been held captivity at places we thought they are homes, yet they were not homes. Okay? Now, I want you to take your time and listen to this conversation. It's a very wonderful conversation. And then as you're watching the video, prepare your thoughts. I want to know your opinions about the whole issue. I want to know what you have to say about it on the comment section. I will do my best to make sure I read all of them and give a response where possible. I am Atamba Haiti, this African Streamline. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share, and don't forget to also subscribe. Okay? Now, my good people, let's take a minute and go direct to the video. Welcome.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت. The similitude or analogy of those who take protectors or allies besides Allah is like the similitude of spiders. كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتا, that they take for themselves this as a home. But then Allah brings up the reality of what this means. وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبِيُوتِ in Shurba, وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. The weakest of all homes is the home of the spider. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. If only they knew. Now, we've been talking about this a bit here and there, but whenever I hear this ayah from the 29th chapter of the Quran, name the spiders. The 41st verse, I think a lot about how people have internalized so many structures and systems of power, of Western empirical power, as pretty much being like the supreme power of the world, and the intricacies of the design of those power dynamics and the history. It seems like a lot of people are stuck in it, like their own little spider web, and even just what it means to take allies besides Allah, to take non-Muslims as allies, or to lean into power that is not conducive with the trajectory of where the world is going, which is far more Islamic power, far more Muslim countries coming into their own, the global South rising. These are just some of many things that come to mind, as well as the nature of the spider and some of the tafsir related to it. Of course, you and I having this conversation, inshallah, is just pulling some reflections of the Quran and connecting it to things that we see in the world around us. But wanted to take a moment and ask you, when you hear the similitude of the spider's web in its home, what comes to mind for you, Sheikhna?
Well, I think there's a lot of, obviously, I mean, as again, as you and I have talked about, the guidance of Quran, subhanAllah, the layers, the depths of the guidance that you can get from it, all of the meanings that you can take from a single ayah. You could go on for days just analyzing and reflecting and contemplating on it. But we were talking about how, and this is the sort of the whole focus of Middle Nation, is exactly that, to restore the proper place of Islamic guidance, Quranic guidance, the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to exactly that, guidance, meaning something that you actually follow, something that you are guided by, something that actually tells you how to understand the world properly. And I think that, you know, when I hear this ayah, there are several layers of sort of real world meaning that you can draw from it in terms of protectors and finding a home in the spider's web, or finding a home, or finding protection, finding guardianship, awliya, yani people that you trust, people that you rely upon for protection, people whose opinion matters to you, people who are your source of truth, meaning that you trust them. Meaning you think that they're telling you the truth. That's what trust means. You think they're telling you the truth. And patronage, reliance. There's so many different ways that manifests in our daily life. Whether you're talking politically, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is epistemologically. Because when you're talking about the spider's web, and finding a home in that, and seeking protection from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first place that my mind goes is that when you are using other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and other than Allah's guidance as your source of knowledge, as your source of truth, as your source of understanding, because these are all ways that you protect yourself. The way that you understand the world is how you either protect yourself or endanger yourself, depending upon how you understand the world, and upon whom you trust or distrust, who you place your confidence in. And if that's not being guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then by whom? Except by those who are not worthy of your trust, those who cannot protect you, you know. But so epistemologically, I think about it in terms of you have adopted their methodologies, you've adopted their philosophies, you've adopted their ideologies, you've adopted their paradigms, you've adopted their frameworks for understanding the world. And all of these things put you in danger. All of these things put you in danger because, as Allah said, this is the weakest house. You've put yourself now in the weakest house, the house of the spider. And then the other thing that makes me think about, the other thing that I think about is, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never uses a metaphor recklessly or without a very clear intention when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses a metaphor. And if you think about a spider, I think one of the interesting things to me about a spider is that it literally spins its home from within itself. It creates its home from within itself, unlike almost any other creature in the world. I mean, there are a few examples, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presumably chose the spider because it's the most obvious and the most known, not like a mollusk or something.
Sure.
Some sort of an amoeba. But the spider spins the web from within itself, from the substance within itself that it secretes. It creates this web, it creates this home. And this to me is very, very apt when you're talking about the West. And I was just talking about it in a recent talk about how the West's they're intellectually inbred because they only breed with themselves intellectually, ideologically. They refuse and reject any ideas outside of their frameworks. They reject any non-Western thinkers, any non-Western thought, any non-Western ideas, any non-Western philosophy. And of course, they reject religion. They reject the ultimate source of knowledge that's non-Western, the creator of the East and the West. They reject that. And they create from within themselves their own home, their own ideological home, their own intellectual home, their own philosophical home, from within themselves, what they already have, what they already believe. And that's in and of itself is very materialistic. The substance from which it creates its whole world, its whole protection, its whole home, its whole safety net. And this is exactly like the West, epistemologically, intellectually, ideologically, politically. Everything is self-referencing, self-referential.
Allahu Akbar.
They're pulling it all out from themselves, and they're rejecting anything that comes from outside of them, even if that outside of them is from the transcendent, from the creator of the universe. They even reject that. It has to be right here with me in order for me to believe it and trust it and make something out of it. And if it's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or if it's coming from the East, or it's coming from Africa, or if it's coming from anywhere else, well, it's useless. It has to be coming directly from me because that's the only thing that I value. I find this is very Western. And then if you're going to, then obviously there's the part, and I'm sorry I'm speaking so much.
No.
Then there's the fact of you taking protection with these people. You're taking them as your protectors when they themselves are not protected. And they're not the ones who grant protection. You are seeking protection, again, not just literally, not just physically, not just militarily. I know most people would jump on that we rely on them for military contracts or weapons from America and so forth. That's the least issue, because even that, actually, if you think about it in real terms, no one is asking America to protect them. That's not why those military bases are there. That's not why they buy the weapons. That has nothing to do with we want you to protect us. That has nothing to do with it. They're doing that for leverage. But in fact, the purchase of those weapons is a way to avoid needing protection from America, meaning being protected against America by buying their weapons so that you can get on their good side. That's not seeking protection with them. It's seeking protection against them. But the thing that when I think about it is the thinking, ideologically, philosophically, their paradigms, their frameworks. You're seeking protection in that. You're seeking, you're making that your home. You're making that your home, whether you are in the West or not. You've allowed that spider web to reach all across the globe until it's gotten into your own mind and into your own heart. To where that's the way you're making sense of the world, rather than seeking protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as he said, this is the weakest house. This is absolutely the weakest house. And of course, he's using the example of the spider web because of its own weakness, that if just a strong wind comes up, it's gone. But the point is, any protector besides Allah, that's who he's talking about, is anyone who takes a protector besides Allah. And the example, the similitude is the web. The inherent, innate, intrinsic weakness of that, because like I say, you're not the one who grants protection. You're just like me. This is lateral, this is horizontal protection. It's not being granted from the one who grants protection. Like America, the West, or what have you, they can't protect you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they can't protect themselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why would you seek protection with them? Again, not just physical security protection, protection in terms of your mind and your understanding of the world.
Socially.
Right. And your values, your standards, your whole criteria for judging life in the world. Why would you trust this? You know, if you're looking outside of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your criteria for understanding the world, then you will misunderstand the world. Absolutely. And this is very weak. This puts you in a very weak and vulnerable position. You're relying on people and you're depending on people and you're seeking protection from people who are dangerous to you. They will use, especially when you're talking about the West, if you seek protection from them, all that does is give them the upper hand over you. And they're just like anyone else in this world, just trying to survive. You're dealing with someone who is dependent, just like you, who is helpless, just like you, and who is self-interested, just like you. So what makes you think they're going to protect you?
Well, what do you say about these Muslim countries and Muslim governments who are taking awliya with the West or Abraham Accords or like, isn't there a double standard there? That, okay, Muslims in the West, yeah, they take a lot of their ethics, a lot of their morality, a lot of their worldview from that spider's house. But aren't you seeing on a geopolitical level allyship with these proverbial spiders?
I don't see it that way, and I don't think that the leaders themselves see it that way.
Sure.
Because, as I said earlier, what they're actually just doing is navigating reality. They're navigating a very dangerous and risky region, and a very dangerous. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And we know their intentions. We know their intentions. So if you make any kind of a deal that gets them off your back, that buys you some latitude, that buys you some slack, and gives you some degree of autonomy, then this isn't you making friends with them. That's you knowing that they're your enemy. That's you knowing that they're a threat to you, and you're trying to get them at some kind of a distance to where you can protect yourself. This is the opposite, actually, of seeking protection. As I said earlier, it's the opposite of, you're not seeking protection from them, you're seeking protection against them by means of making some kind of a deal or making some kind of a trade-off that will abate the threat that they pose to you. So I think this is very different. I think if you see it that way, then again, like we've talked about many times, then geopolitics is just not your area.
Sure. Yeah, you know, one thing that you led with earlier is how I know when you and I talk, we always kind of go back to this sort of Quranic framework. We're looking at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how masterful he was in his strategy as a statesman, looking at the Khulafa Rashidin and these righteous leaders who had to navigate a plethora of different power dynamics, you know, both regionally and as Islam spread throughout the world. I know we're always having that conversation on the back end, but just to kind of bring everyone into that dialogue, you know, for the Quran, we as Muslims, and take it from two former Christians, like we don't view the Quran through the same framework as the Bible, where we can just take our opinion and just project our opinion into what we extrapolate from it. So we have an exegetical process that we use in order to extrapolate interpolation and application. And this is a call for us. It's a call for us to reflect. It's a call for us to contemplate, to deliberate, and then through that understanding, live according to it. And so in the Quran, there's over 40 amthal, these similitudes and analogies, and this is one of them. This chapter, the 29th chapter of the Quran, is named after this similitude. It covers a lot of different topics. It covers, you know, Nuh alayhi salam, Prophet Noah, and his time with his people and the trial of that. And, you know, it has a wide range there, but then right before you get to the end of the surah, you get this analogy of the spider's house. Those who take allies besides Allah are like those who take for their allies the spider. And then Allah explains that the weakest of all homes is the house of the spider. And later on that same page in the Quran, Allah says, وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ. These are analogies and similitudes that Allah strikes forward for human beings to think about. وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. But the only ones who will really be able to intellectually and rationally really reflect on this are people with sound knowledge, sound fundamental knowledge. I know for me, when I think of this ayah, I think about, being in the spider's web, how people came here thinking that it was a home, seeking political opportunity, educational opportunity. But we see popular figures, we see Muslim communities in the West get ensnared in that trap. And subhanAllah, I became Muslim about 12 years ago. In memorizing Quran, we come across this chapter. And I just have all these miscellaneous facts in my head about animals, but even more so spiders, right? And subhanAllah, I remember being so fascinated by this ayah because Allah says, ittahadat bayta. They take for their home, the home of the spiders. But spider webs are not homes. They're traps. It's a trap. You've taken for a home, a trap. And when you look at the classical tafsir explanations of this, Imam al-Tabari, rahmatullahi alayhi, he said that those who rely on other than Allah, besides Allah, for protection, for provision, so not just to be protected, but also to be provided for, they're like the spider that relies upon its web. It avails them not. So it's a false sense of reliance because when you think about a spider, spiders have fangs, sure. Some of them can cause a painful bite. Some of them can make you sick. If they bite you, some of them can literally kill you. But the spider as an animal is weak. It has fangs, it has venom, but the rest of it is extremely weak. So it's a fragile creature. In its home, they say that spider silk is 5 times stronger than steel, right? By weight. But strength in one area, having fangs, having venom, having, spider silk that's 5 times stronger than steel. Strength in one aspect does not equate to stability or strength in other aspects. So when you rely upon false systems, they may seem durable, but they shatter very easily. So, there's sometimes like non-Muslims will try to be critical of, hadith, isnad matinkum analysis or, but if you start to poke holes at their history, it falls apart very quickly. So why would any Muslim in the West use their web and take that as a home for an academic criteria? Or when it comes to ethics, like we come across this a lot in different Muslim communities, young Muslim sisters who are online and they see these Islamophobic narratives about the age of Aisha radiallahu anha, about hijab, about oppression, Sharia law. But if you begin to look at the most hypersexualized society on the face of the planet that has pretty much, tried to weaponize the beauty of a woman and degrade that down to just porn industry, OnlyFans, and the minute that critique is pointed at that thing that you've taken as a home, it falls apart very quickly. So Imam al-Tabari was saying that those who rely upon other than Allah, it's like a spider relying upon its web. The spider is weak. Yeah, it has fangs, but it's weak otherwise. And its home is weak. It can't really protect it otherwise. It's a fragile, false sense of reliance. And when harm does come, it doesn't actually protect you at all. And Imam Ibn Kathir, in his tafsir, he notes that the spider's web, and Imam al-Alusi, he also mentions this in his tafsir as well, that the spider's web cannot protect you from heat. If it's cold outside, you're not going to be warm inside of it. It can't protect you from rain. If it's raining outside, you're going to be wet inside of it. It can't protect you from destruction. This is the same for all false gods, for all awliyat that a person takes besides Allah. And the same is true, like you also noted, like it's a lateral level of reliance upon Allah. Like they can't help you against Allah's plan or decree. So the appearance of the intricacy of the spider's web, it actually betrays its own weakness. You can see a spider can take hours, like in a time-lapse video. So a spider can take hours creating a web. And with the pressure of just the whole thing falls you know, and that is how it is on an epistemological level. We're seeing the fragility on an economic level. An economy so fragile that people can be deceived and lose all this money just off of NFTs and Bitcoin, all these scams and schemes on an economic level. But that's where one thing that comes to mind. I'm just bringing some of the tafsir that comes to mind. Imam al-Qurtubi, when he was describing like the similitude of the spider, because these analogies are rare in the Quran, a lot of scholars historically spend a lot of time explaining what it means. So Imam al-Qurtubi, he mentioned that when the male spider approaches the female spider, that she devours him. And when the young spiders hatch within their web, they engage in siblicide, they eat each other. So the weakness of the home of the spider isn't merely weakness because the spider's web is fragile and the spider is fragile. It is ethically fragile because spiders don't have a sense of moral unity. They're weak in structure, but they're weak in ethics too. The nature of the spider and the nature of the spider's home is naturally self-destructive. And if any of you have ever heard of a black widow spider, you know that the female spider devours the male spider after mating. And so you have like relationships within the spider's web, speaking, you know, in this case, reflectively about the West, not saying the ayah is about the West, but reflecting on the world that we live in 2025. The relationships and the systems consume each other. They consume each other. And you pointed this out to actually in your videos that now that they can't eat the rest of the world, what do you think they're going to eat? They turn to one another. When you look at different species of spiders, wolf spiders, hatchlings, orb weaver spiders, which make these really complicated webs, those many species of spiders, but those are just two, for example, they engage in siblicide. The young eat each other. So when you are in a society that doesn't have any divine ethics whatsoever, of course they're going to devour one another. Spiders, you know, Allah says ankabut, plural, ankabut, spider singular. Allah says spiders plural, but spiders are solitary creatures. Spiders live alone. You know, they may kill intruders, they may eat each other, but their nature is a solitary one. And so when you take for your home, the home of people that only care about themselves, individualism is the whole nature of their existence, then you can't be surprised that you will also lead an isolated existence. You know, Dr. Murthy Vivek in 2023 issued a loneliness epidemic in the United States that 1 in 2, meaning 50% of all Americans experience severe loneliness. So when you're in the house of the spider, you take on the nature of the spider, and the solitude of that ego replaces the companionship that's supposed to come with faith. One thing that comes to mind, Sheikhna, about just the nature of the spider is, you know, spiders on average, depending on the species, they live about a year, maybe max. So their home is fragile. So every time it rebuilds, it constantly has to rebuild it. Day in, day out, week in, week out. They make a spider's web in the morning. It may not even make it to see the ending. And when you think about just Western ideology, hedonism, seeing this world as Jannah, seeing this world as everything, their worldly pursuits are short-lived. And when you think about what it takes for a spider to optimize its web, the web is a trap that it uses for hunting in more cases than not, or a nest for its sibling or for its hatchlings, which then just eat each other. But how does a bug get caught in a spider's web? It's a ghafla. It's heedlessness. Heedlessness is what causes them to become ensnared. It's you are getting trapped in something that when you're ensnared in it, what is then supposed to be the reflection when you're stuck in it? You at least have to have the self-awareness to recognize that you're stuck in it. Lo kanu ya'lamun. You can't be delusional and say, hey, not all webs are bad. And just because we're in the web doesn't mean the spider's going to eat us. And like you can't start doing these mental gymnastics. Lo kanu ya'lamun. If only you knew the nature of it. And so a lot of Middle Nation content at its fundamental core is waking people up to the reality of just how widespread that web is. And then using that understanding to then recognize where you're ensnared intellectually, spiritually, socially, economically, psychological colonization, economic sovereignty, corporate democratization, to then try to get your way out of it. And, you know, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that those who are having to engage with this web on a geopolitical global scale, are slowly but surely wriggling their way out of it, because Allah knows that web has become a trap for far too many. Allah musta'an.
The clarification that the spider's web is a trap. It's not a home. And I don't want this to be misunderstood as a geographic location.
Sure.
Because we're making a lot of comparisons, obviously, to the West.
Mm-hmm.
But the ayah is talking about anyone who takes protectors with other than Allah, or takes other than Allah as their protectors.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't even about your location. This is about your mentality. This is about your intention. This is about what's going on in your mind before you ever, for example, rely upon someone to do something for you, or that you think they're going to protect you, or what have you. It's a thought before anything else. Before you ever take any action about it, before you ever seek someone's help, you have already thought to yourself, "Oh, this is the one that's going to help me." So we're talking about a mental state, a spiritual state, psychological state, which is the basis for. This is what the ayah was talking about. Is what's going on in your heart, what's going on in your mind, with who you think is trustworthy, who you think you can rely upon, who you believe that you can depend upon, excuse me, who you believe can protect you. And as in the tafsir that you were talking about, I think it was a Tabari, maybe a Qurtubi, was talking about, for example, provision. And so this is protection against hunger. You know, you understand that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about protectors, like as I said in the beginning, we're talking about many different types of protection. It's protection against doubt, protection against uncertainty, protection against hunger, protection against fear, protection against insecurity, protection against loneliness, just like you were talking about. There's all of these ways that you try to, in fact, loneliness, let's go with that. Because what you're going to, other than what, and here when it talks about seeking other than Allah as your protector, I'm not talking about becoming an ascetic who's quote unquote married to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not what I'm talking about in terms of loneliness. I'm talking about solving your loneliness by following the guidance of Allah for how you cannot be lonely in this world. Yani marriage, nikah, through the proper Islamic ways. This is how you deal with your normal human needs, your normal need for intimacy, for companionship, and so forth. Follow the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed you. Follow the guidance. This is what we're talking about. That the guidance is exactly that. It is guidance. And if you follow the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is you seeking Allah's protection. You're seeking protection from Allah against misguidance, against being lost, against trying to find your own way. Whereas if you're seeking the guidance of others, then you're seeking the protection from others and taking the spider's house as your home, the spider's trap as your home, because it's always a trap. Because it's always a trap. If you're seeking a way to solve your loneliness, by the way the West teaches you to solve your loneliness, well, you're going to be even more lonely. You're going to be more lonely than you ever could have been, and you're going to end up having, like I was talking about in that recent talk, an AI girlfriend or a robot girlfriend, because you're not able to even establish a human connection. You're solving your loneliness problem by just giving up on even the idea of ever having a connection with another human being. That's the West solution. That's a trap. It just draws you further and further down. It brings you further and further into the problem that you're seeking protection from, or you're seeking protection against. It's exactly perfect what you said. It's not a home, it's a trap. If you're seeking, and again, it's not just the West, and we're not talking about anyone who goes to the West or anyone who lives in the West. We're talking about if you're thinking and you're seeking protection from any of these various types of things. Like I said, it's not just physical protection, security. It's protection against confusion, against being lost, against doubt, against uncertainty, against, obviously, like we were talking about with provision, against hunger, against the material needs, the practical needs, all of these things. So, for example, if you're seeking protection from hunger, from other than Allah, we're not talking about, oh, Allah give me food. We're talking about keeping halal. We're talking about believing in your rizq, that your rizq is from Allah.
You should even have to clarify.
Right, but it has to be clarified because some people are either unintentionally or deliberately foolish.
Sure.
We're talking about the fact that you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ar-razaq, and that you don't have to fear poverty, and that your provision is written for you, and so therefore never swerve into the haram in order to achieve your rizq.
Yeah,
In order to
don't get
try to
ensnared.
attain your rizq. Yeah, don't get ensnared.
Yeah,
Exactly, because if you do that, then you're doing exactly that. You're seeking protectors other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning I don't believe Allah is going to be the one to protect me from hunger, but I think so and so is going to protect me from hunger. I think this alcohol company will protect me from hunger if I work for them, or this house of finance that engages in riba, I will work for them and they'll protect me from hunger. No.
yeah,
This is what I mean, where you're seeking protection from other than Allah, meaning you're not following Allah's guidance, and you're following a guidance of whether it's, again, I keep going back to the West because it's just the obvious example, but it could be anywhere.
Sure.
Meaning whatever someone outside of Islam, whatever some paradigm or what some framework outside of Islam tells you you must do in order for you to be protected from hunger, from fear, from uncertainty, from doubt, whatever, from derision.
What success is like.
Protection from failure.
To get ahead,
Right. Protection from failure, protection from poverty, protection from humiliation. If you're seeking any protection from any of these things or against any of these things from other than Allah, meaning from other than following Allah's guidance, they're all traps. They're all traps. And if you're seeking protection in those things, you will inevitably only endanger yourself further. You will get even further at risk than what you were seeking protection from in the first place, or protection against.
One thing that comes to mind is Imam Abu-Razi, rahmatullahi alayhi, he mentioned that in his tafsir that the spider's web is actually wahm, it's delusion, and that it's complex in form but void in essence. And so, as you noted, it's easy to say West, or it's easy to talk military power, but it's even just in terms of your own states, in your own hearts, in your own mind. Like, how many people are ensnared in the digital web? They've taken X, they've taken Reddit, they've taken illicit sexual material sites, they've taken a certain content as distractions from the actual world that they're in. They're ensnared in the virtual web of likes, in the virtual webs of follows, in the virtual web of screen time, of taking validation as a protector, of seeking refuge and popularity, so now they're ensnared in the web of the algorithmic design. But that web, it collapses when facing any semblance of reality. Or even, not take too many shots at my brothers and sisters, my diaspora brothers and sisters, spiritual diaspora brothers and sisters in America, but come on, man. Every year we're waiting for a new campaign, new candidate. Every 4 years, you're looking for a new savior. Spiders are spiders, blue or red. The web is still the web. And these are signs for those who reflect. So look, I know it's going to trigger somebody because look, far too often Muslims, we because of Western academic conditioning, have trained ourselves to just be so skeptical that we lack an open heart and an open mind. We're more critical of our own than we are of everyone else and everything else. And we engage in this form of spiritual hyperbole where two things can't be true at the same time. Brother, how am I supposed to feed my family? You're saying I have to... Listen, akhi, take it easy. Two things can be true. You have the job, you have the work and all that stuff, but you know that it's Allah. You're not taking that workplace as your home. That is weak. The one who enabled that place to provide for you is Allah. This is the deeper layer of thinking, and people have to be trained into that. But using that as a precursor to talk about like the flotilla Oh, look at what the non-Muslims are doing. And, when your heart relies upon systems that are divorced from Allah, the result will always be disappointment. The house of the spider will always collapse, and it will collapse again, and it will collapse again, and it will collapse again. We mourn oppression, but we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at what we contribute to that. We have to be willing to unsnare ourselves from these traps that we find ourselves in. And again, like modern distractions, the material webs, the web of entertainment, the web of wealth, the web of consumerism. These are the spider's modern threads. And so whether it's Imam al-Tabari talking about the weakness of the false protectors, or Imam Ibn Kathir talking about the fragility of false power, or Imam al-Qurtubi talking about the moral cannibalism, or Imam al-Razi talking about the cognitive delusion, the oham, or Imam al-Alusi talking about the emotional and spiritual weakness of it. For us, we're looking to something deeper than that web. So now the question becomes, if you see a world immersed in the spider's web, Lokanu Ya'lamun, like, what do you think Allah is trying to tell you? It's to tell you to rely upon Him alone without partners, and do not let shaitan, don't let the devil lock you into a defeatist mindset of, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Well, the reliance upon other than Allah started in here, so the unsnaring of being caught in that web has to start here too. And when you start here, when you begin to untangle yourself from that, through relying upon Allah, through turning to Allah, through investing spiritually, intellectually, socially, economically, when you begin to invest in reliance upon Allah, you will find yourself free. You will find yourself, a way out of those situations and circumstances. Lo kanu ya'lamun, if only they knew. Inna Allaha ya'lamu ma yad'una min dunihi shay, wa huwa al-azizul hakim. Allah knows that they call upon other than Him. Allah knows this about them. But He, Subhana, is the one who is the all-powerful, the all-supreme, and the all-wise. وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ. And Allah gives you these analogies to humanity. وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. But the only one who's going to be able to reflect on it are those who have that sound knowledge. So this is some of just, I could honestly go on, and how that spider's web makes you think that tawakkul in Allah is not an answer. But the only reason why you're stuck in the first place is because the tawakkul was what was deficient. So fixing that deficiency, the tawakkul deficiency, is what then gives you the strength to break out of that web. It is a weak home, and don't ever let anything that you see in life make you think otherwise. The weakest of all homes, and that's the riwayah of Shu'bah, the weakest of all homes is the house of the spider. So just because you're in it doesn't mean you always have to stay like that. And that's why, from a Middle Nation perspective, we have that future historical analysis. We know what Allah has promised us. So yeah, it's complex, and we all feel ensnared in a lot of ways today, but it's weak, and Allah is the one that can change the tide. And Allah will do that because He promised He would. That's why, from a Middle Nation perspective and a paradigm, this is why we have that victorious narrative. Yeah, you can look at all of the things in the world and be like, wrong. They could do this better, this, that, or the third. Well, first of all, see and make sure that you're not ensnared in that Western sort of pseudo-intellectual, hyper-skeptical, overly critical, cynical mindset, and free yourself of that. And then when you fully relied upon Allah, what then does the narrative look like besides victory for the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That requires a lot of psychological decolonization. You got to unsnare yourself quite a bit, but inshallah, we can work our way towards it together.
I think this is one of the most important aspects for analysis with regards to that ayah and that similitude is the weakness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing to, the weakness. And again, here it's the weakness of those who seek protection and seek protectors other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which again, as we've explained, has to do with all different areas. Even, as I say, protection against even ignorance, protection against confusion, protection against being misled, protection against being lied to, and so forth. Protection against misunderstanding. And that when you're seeking, like, okay, in the context of analysis, as I've talked about before, and as you just mentioned, with the victorious narrative sort of future history, which is, as I've explained many times, the way that we do analysis, or the way that I do analysis, is more like looking at what's going on today from the perspective of a future historian who is writing the story, writing the history of Muslim victory, and looking at 2025 or whatever year it might be, looking at the events in 2025 and saying, explaining the history of what role those events played in the ultimate eventual victory of Islam and the victory of the Muslims. This is coming from a point of truth. This is coming from a point of knowledge that is sound knowledge, that is unquestionable, undeniable knowledge, because it comes from the Creator. It comes from the one who's already written everything that's going to happen ever. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already told us the end of this story. We know the end of this story. We know what's going to happen. How this, we know all the way up until the last day of this life, of this existence. We know what's going to happen. So this must play a role in your analysis. If you're a Muslim and you have this knowledge and you pretend that this is just a religious belief that has no role in how I interpret reality, how I interpret events in the world that are really happening, then you have already fallen into the spider's web of thinking about religion the way that the kuffar think about religion, which is just something that makes you feel good. It's just something to make you a better person, make you be nice to people, and so forth. No, it's knowledge, it's guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the creator of everything, from the creator of you and I. All of this has already happened from the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's already been written. The pens have been lifted. The ink is dry on the page, as we know. But you're acting like you don't know. If you're making analysis and you're a Muslim and you're acting like you don't know this, then you have already fallen into the spider's web in terms of seeking the protection of the kuffar against a misunderstanding of the role of religion. And all they've done is make you misunderstand the role of religion even more, because like you said correctly, that house is not a house, it's a trap. And all it does is pull you in for the prey of the one who made that house. In this case, we're talking about whoever's paradigms you're using that created those paradigms to trap you and to prey upon you, because like I said earlier, this is lateral. We're all on the same level here. There's nobody above anybody else. We're all coming up with the same types of things. So you can come up with your idea of how the world is supposed to work. You can come up with your idea. You can come up with your paradigms. And they're all the same. They're all of equal value, which is of no value when it's compared to the one who gives us guidance from the one who created this reality that we live in. We're all dependent on that. And we're all unprotected, except if he gives us protection. We can't protect each other. In this regard, again, not talking about physical security protection like that. I'm talking about in your understanding and protection from all of the things that people seek protection from, whether they frame it in that way or not. Like I said, you're seeking protection. For example, if you're a Muslim and you're analyzing the world without considering the fact that everything has already happened with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in terms of it already being written, the history that we have, that we can remember, and the history that's gone behind us is not more settled than the history that's in front of us. The history that's in front of us is also settled, exactly the same as the history that's behind us. And we know that as Muslims. This is part of a core belief of Iman. Qada wa qadar. We believe in this. And so if you're acting like, well, I don't know if the Muslims are going to have victory, I don't know if this is going to happen or not. Okay, then you are not applying the correct understanding, or you're not utilizing the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it was intended to be used and utilized and understood. You know how the Sahaba, when they would memorize Quran, they would take, I believe, 3 ayat at a time.
10
They would
max.
take 10 max. Okay.
10 by 10, yeah.
And then they would try to memorize it, they would try to understand the meaning, and then they would try to see the implementation.
Yep.
How this is implemented in the world. Their understanding was that this is absolutely always relevant. There's always a way that this can be manifest and how this should be implemented and how this can be understood in real life in the world under changing circumstances, under changing conditions. How this should determine how I deal with this and that and the other that comes up. And you can see just from this ayah, subhanallah, there's so much that you can take from it just in terms of psychological decolonization, epistemological sovereignty, freeing yourself from the domination of ways of living, lifestyles, habits of thought, ideologies, intellectual habits that oppress you. You know, just from this ayah, just one ayah, you can draw all of this and much more, obviously, than we could ever go into. There's so much that you can get from it. But as I began to say, this is why it's absolutely necessary to apply in your analysis, if you're a Muslim. And this is also why I've said no one who isn't a Muslim can do proper analysis. This is a fact. No one who is not a Muslim, who doesn't have this understanding of Islam and this understanding of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed about this dunya and about the future, can do any proper geopolitical analysis. But in my opinion, this is the same in almost any area that you can think of. If you're not a Muslim and you don't have this understanding of Quran and Sunnah, then your analysis is always going to be flawed, because I'm not saying anything different than what the ayah said. Because that's a house that is weaker than the spider's house, or it's as weak as the house of the spider, because that's seeking protection in other than Allah in terms of your knowledge, in terms of you're seeking protection against ignorance, you're seeking protection against misunderstanding, you're seeking a protection of being confused about the world through someone else's paradigm. I'm seeking protection in their paradigm because their paradigm explains the world to me. No, it does not. It's a trap. Just like what you said. It's not a house. You think communism is a house, it's a trap. You think Marxism is a house, it's a trap. You think capitalism, you think democracy, you think whatever, liberalism, you think these are houses to live in, meaning they're paradigms that explain the world and put everything in its proper place, and now I can go through life successfully. No, they're all traps. It's all traps.
You know, the pushback, and when we start talking about and defining that pushback, it is more of a reflexive conditioned response than anything else, right? I saw communism as a much more significant alternative to what I perceive to be the corrosive byproduct of capitalism. And you've noted in the past that, you know, look, it's the system is only the way that it is because of the people. You know, they would find a way to taint anything. It's spider's web is spider's web, whether it's Black Widow or Brown Recluse. They still have the same fundamental function. And in that way, because when we start talking about reflecting on the Quran, you can reflect on its literal meaning, you can reflect on its metaphorical meaning, you can reflect on what it says explicitly, what it implies implicitly, but also that its opposite is true. So this ayat shows us that there's a danger. Shirk is not merely the one who says Jesus is the Son of God and God had a son and killed his son in order to forgive the sins of people. Shirk is not merely the pantheon of gods and cow worship that you see in Hinduism. Shirk is not merely, ancestral worship, or shirk can sometimes be, you've said, I can't rely upon Allah alone exclusively, so I have to rely upon this too. And shirk is at its fundamental core associationism. You've said that there has, or intermediaryism, like there has to be an intermediary between me and Allah in order for me to arrive at this thing with Allah, or I have to use this along with my understanding of Islam in order to. But no, if that was the case, then you would have to go back and rewrite our entire Islamic history, because how are they able to achieve so much? How are they able to accomplish so much? How are they able to overcome so much when all they had was Islam? No, those who take as their allies, spiders, the house of the spiders, there are those who do not take that as their home. And they are not in the weakest of all homes. They are in the strongest of homes. So for anyone who needs an action item, inspect your web. What's your check? Do some housekeeping. Are you in a trap? Are you ensnared in this? Do you suffer from being in the web of whataboutism? Like you can't hear one thing without a what about. So you got to add in those extra awliya. Wallahu waliyul ladina amanu, and Allah is the ally of those who believe. Is that Allah is sufficient for us? Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Check your house. Check the house of your mind. Check the house of your heart. Check your home itself. Check your environment. Check your social circles, and ask yourself: do I depend on that which distracts me from Allah, or am I, bait is home, dar is home, but the spider's web is a trap. So are you at home? Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam. Allah is, Allah is the source of that peace that you want. Are you finding Darus Salam, the peace that you carry in your heart through istislam, submission to Allah, as-salam, the source of all that peace? Or have you set up allies with Allah? Because that's the weakest of all houses, and that weakness will make itself manifest time and time and time again. And we ask Allah to protect us from being trapped in those webs, intellectually, spiritually, socially, economically, geopolitically, and otherwise. Ya Rabbil Alameen, Allahumma ameen. It would definitely go a long way towards that Quranic psychological decolonization, because look, I'm in the West, right? I see it. I see it all the time. From people think that the web of like the Christian anti-Islam dawah, they think that it's a complex thing. It's a weak house. People think that the, gender wars that exist online, that it's a complex. It's not. These are just spiders eating each other,
It's very sort of appalling that we have to actually say this, but
Yes.
but it is something that we have to say to our own brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Just that. Take that. Think about the implications and the ramifications and the repercussions of that fact. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you the truth. Bas. If you think about it, if you ponder it, if you reflect upon it, if you contemplate that fact, you'll be fine. You should be fine. And all of this other noise will fade away. And that fact should be enough. I mean, we talk about psychological decolonization of the Muslims and of the global South more broadly. This should be easier for the Muslims than anyone else. It should be easier for the Muslims than anyone else. Because if you're a non-Muslim in the global South, if you're a non-Muslim in a formerly colonized and currently neo-colonized country, you have to decide what you're going to fall back on. You have to decide what's your epistemological sovereignty going to be based upon. Is it going to be based upon our pre-colonial ways, our pre-colonial ideas, or are we going to now adopt, as many of them did, Western leftist ideas? We're going to adopt communism or Marxism, socialism, which is you're just taking another ideology from your colonizing countries, taking more ideologies from the West and adopting it, as you were saying, as a reaction to another Western ideology, rather than coming up with your own. Or, like I say, either you're going to go back to the pre-colonial traditions and ideas and heritage and whatnot, or you're going to take from some oppositional ideology that exists from the West, or you have to come up with something. You have to invent something. We don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
Islam was with us before and during and now. The Quran was with us before, during, and now. Colonization. And it's, as I say, if you understand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you the truth, you don't need anything else. This should be enough to decolonize your mind. But I understand that spider keeps spinning webs all the time, and it's very difficult. They get all in your face, and it's very difficult to keep those webs off of you sometimes. But I mean, like you were talking about. I mean, with the gender wars and the culture wars and the race issues and the whatever LGBT issues, the feminism, the red pill, the this rights and those rights, and so on and so on and so on. All of that seems important. And like you said, I'm just taking this ideology as a response to something that was a more destructive ideology and whatnot. Okay, well, some spiders eat your insides out, some spiders eat your head off. It's not a big difference. You're either following the truth or you're following various versions of falsehood that are varying degrees of comfort level for your nafs. That's all that is. But you're never going to be safe. You're never going to be protected. You're certainly never going to be guided. You're never going to be right. You're never going to understand the world. You're never going to have protection against all of those things that we talked about. You're never going to be protected from confusion. You're never going to be protected from doubt. You're never going to be protected from falsehood. You're never going to be protected from wrong. You're never going to be protected from psychological instability, emotional instability, hopelessness, fear, sadness, depression. None of these things can protect you from any of that. Only following the truth, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you the truth. So if you want to seek protection from falsehood, you have to go to the one who tells you the truth. The one who is al-haq, who can tell you the truth. I mean, if you, like I say, subhanAllah, this in and of itself should be enough of a statement to decolonize the mind, the psyche of any Muslim. Allah told you the truth. He told you the truth about the kuffar. He told you the truth about kufr. He told you the truth about shaitan. He told you the truth about iman. He told you the truth about Islam. He told you the truth about Jannah and Jahannam. He told you the truth about all of these things. This should be sufficient.
But the problem,
for any Muslim.
The deficiency is conflating or reducing out of ignorance or out of arrogance, or maybe a mix of the two, what Allah said with everything else. And that we know that Allah created the spider. Right? We know that we know that Allah is the fashioner, cherisher, sustainer, and maintainer of the multiverse as we know it and don't know it. There are those who believe in a higher power. There are those who don't. There are those who believe in a higher power incorrectly, because Allah is who Allah says Allah is, and what Allah is not, Allah will never be. So we don't need to make up who God is when God has told us who he is, and that is in the Quran. There are those who believe that the Quran is from God. There are those who find reasons to not believe that. But as you said, Muslims should be it should be easier for us. Say only one that's going to be reminded is the one that has some semblance of khashiyatullah, of deep reverential fear of their Lord unseen, the one that they know, to him we shall all return. So the deficiency that makes it hard for a person to be like, well, Allah said it, khalas, that's sufficient for me, is maybe ma qadarullah haqqa qadri. You've not thought about Allah the way that you should actually think about Allah. And maybe that's because the web that you're caught in has made you think all things are equal. No, they definitely are not. Ma qadarullah haqqa qadri. You've not really given Allah the estimation that Allah is due. The one that created everything with kun fayakun, be so it is, the one that put you here, the one that will take you from here and will ask you about everything that you did. There's a disconnect there where now the discourse or conversation or even analysis or even epistemological sovereignty, you will have like the whatabouters. It's like, yeah, but can't we use communism or socialism or these systems of thinking? Can we use Western psychology and then bridge that into, something for the deen? It's like, if you have the deen, then you can come up with a new framework. Maybe it will mirror some of the things that work in other systems, but you don't need other systems to come up with that framework, because the framework of what Allah made is sufficient. We don't have to add any weak elements to it. You don't have to say, but the spider's web is 5 times stronger than silk by weight. No. It's still a spider's web. We don't have to use that for building materials. We can use something else, but there has to be a paradigm shift there. And maybe in our next session, we can actually, pull an example from the Quran that perfectly encapsulates what makes it hard for people to adopt that paradigm. Inshallah. So Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. I don't want to keep you longer than I already have. I appreciate your time and I appreciate the conversation. And To all of
I
you
do too.
who joined us as well, we appreciate you and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.